Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. Matt Dieterich here, and today I'd like to show you how I edited a photo of the Orion Nebula shot through a small refractor telescope I have here. This guy is a Takahashi FSQ 106 millimeter refractor. It's got a focal length of 530 millimeters. It's f5, so it's nice and wide in terms of shooting big areas of the night sky. And I have it mated to a modified mirrorless camera. This is a Spencer camera modified Canon EOS R. Best thing about it, I love that I can swivel the screen when I'm out in the field shooting. You can adjust and get very different angles so you can see, focus, make sure all your exposures are okay with a quick flip of the screen. On the side, you have the ability to swap in and out filters. And in this case, I was shooting with their light pollution filter here. So all this is doing is blocking out some of the light pollution from downtown Pittsburgh. And I slide that in, click it, and set it up. So due to the light pollution in this area of Pennsylvania, I was shooting 3-minute photos of the Orion Nebula, and then I shot some smaller photos as well to blend in for the core. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into editing. But remember, DSLRs or mirrorless cameras with small telescopes like refractors can be really fun imaging setups because they're portable, lightweight, and mobile for when you want to go on the run to dark sky sites. Best of luck, and I hope you guys have clear skies, but let's jump in and have a little fun with editing this data in PixInsight. All right, we're here in PixInsight. Step 1, we need to locate all of our files. For me, last night I shot 22 images of the Orion Nebula, 3-minute photos, and I photographed some flats as well, and the flats are gonna correct for the vignetting. Step 1, we're going to go ahead and open scripts, batch pre-processing, and we're going to do the implementation of the flats to correct for that vignetting. So we'll navigate to the folder that had our flats, and we're going to select all the flats. Next up, we're going to go over to the lights. The lights are the photographs we shot of the night sky, which were the Orion Nebula in my example. So I'm going to select the 22 images of the Orion Nebula I shot. We are using images that were shot with a color camera because this was a mirrorless. So we're going to make sure that this CFA is selected, and we're going to click our output directory to that same folder that we used, and this is be the tutorial for us. All right, we're going to click run. And the software is going to give us these 2 warnings because I did not shoot darks or bias. Just for me, this is an example for teaching, and ideally you would want to shoot dark frames and bias frames to really give the cleanest astrophotograph possible. We'll click continue, and it's going to run and apply the flats to the photograph. All right, the software just got done applying the flats. So we will have calibrated images here in this folder, and we'll go up here, and we also have debayered images. So debayered are the ones that are going to be the next used photographs because we shot with a one-shot color. So PixInsight had to debayer them because one-shot colors have arrays over the sensors that are actually giving the pixels their color. Debayered means that it applies that back, so it turns it into a colored image. So as an example, we will open up one of these and just take a look at it and do a quick screen stretch via screen transfer function. All right, so with the light pollution gradient here in Pittsburgh, I still have a vignetting to the side that we'll be able to correct, but it did remove some vignetting on this other side, and the next step when all these become stacked, we'll be able to fix that. So next up, we need to star align the images because we have 22 images that all need to be turned into one single photograph. So star alignment, we're going to select a reference image by going to File. We're going to navigate to that tutorial folder, go to Calibrated, Light, and Debayered, and we'll select the first photograph to be the reference, and then we will add all the remaining photographs, including that first one as well. And we're gonna make sure that we set that output folder to the tutorial as well, and that will go under calibrated, lights, and debayered as well. And then we'll click run, and that will star align all these photographs so it turns them all into a stack. It'll make sure all 22 of those photographs are aligned atop of one another. The stacking process is what performs the noise reduction. That's the statistics which combines all of these 22 photos to reduce the noise while bringing out faint detail in the target that we were shooting. So the stacking and then combining stage, which occurs next, those are the two key portions to astrophotography that create noise-free and deep photographs of the night sky that reveal faint, beautiful detail. Alrighty, so the 22 images have been star aligned now. Next up, we're going to combine all those 22 images via image integration. So we'll open that, clear any old data that we were using, and we're going to add those 22 images from the folder. So the ones that are star aligned have a little R next to them, R meaning registered. So I'm going to sort that by date so we can select the newest and all 22 images. Combination method, I'm going to run average. It'll give us a beautiful, clean photograph, minimal noise, but high signal to noise through that combination method. I'm going to do Winsorized Sigma clipping for pixel rejection. That can help remove any satellite trails, that sort of thing that might have passed through one of the photos, and it'll help pull that out. So we'll hide this, and we're going to run that image integration. Alright, so combination has just finished up. I'm going to hide these files, and we're going to look at a quick stretch of the integrated file, and we still have that light pollution gradient that we're going to remove. But if you zoom in, you can see that the Orion Nebula here, very, very clean with minimal noise. Noise is that speckling in the background, and very clean due to the stacking. So maybe we should take a look at a comparison and look at one photograph. Let's open up one of the single frames from that so you can see the difference in what stacking can do for the night sky. So here you go. Let's take a peek. We were about over this way. So if you can see the difference, pretty substantial. The noise has been significantly reduced thanks to the stacking. This speckling and modeling in the background from the noise is pretty minimal in this stacked image here. Clean, excellent data. And this is not even that much integration time on the target, but much cleaner than a single shot. And we revealed a lot of gas and dust by stacking that the noise has just hidden in the background compared to what we revealed here. Cool. So we have a stacked image. Next up, you can see that we have this dark edge, and I want to remove that by cropping it. So we'll do a dynamic crop. And I'm going to just move that here and select this area. I want to just remove that black portion because that can give us some issues with removing the gradient. So I think something like that looks good. And we'll just click OK. And the cropping has been complete. All right, next up, we have this gradient here due to light pollution. And what I want to do is I want to remove that via dynamic background extraction. This is going to help us remove that gradient. So click the image. Tolerance for this image, I want to increase to about 1.1 samples per row. I want to do, I think, about 4 samples per row. And I noticed that when I reduce this down to about 0.1, that it lets me select these very edge points, which is great. Okay, so I do not want any areas of the nebula selected. So I'm just going to click that point here and click delete. So with some trial and error, I can remove this gradient, and with a light pollution gradient, you want to use a subtraction from this image. It's going to make a model. A model will be subtracted from the photograph, and it will remove as much of that gradient as possible, and we'll click run. Now, sometimes a few iterative processes are necessary for this, but we will look and stretch this background image. So you can see this is the model that it formed. It's modeling that dark edge of the gradient, and it's going to subtract this from the main image here. If we stretch this, should be a little bit better than before. Yeah, you can take a look. Pretty significant improvement. We still have a little dark portion here. I might add a couple more points and adjust a few. It takes a little trial and error. I'm going to remove this point. I'm going to remove this point, and I actually want to add a couple points down on the sides away from the nebula. Just give the model a few more terms, and let's click apply and see if that's any better. All right, now that is looking pretty darn good. So you're starting to see the background gas and dust be revealed, and I'm kind of blown away that we pulled this much out from 10 miles north of downtown Pittsburgh. This area there is beautiful dust in the night sky near the Orion Nebula, and it's just beautiful what modeling of that background can do to reveal that gas and dust. You can see this is all dark nebula up here. It's amazing. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I still see a little dark portion on this side, and I might try one more go to see what we can do about removing that. So let's hide this guy, and let's see about adjusting any of the other model terms to get rid of that. Let's see, maybe I'll remove a couple of these points here and reduce it. Sometimes less points actually helps the model in terms of accuracy, but the trial and error process is definitely in effect here, and it just takes a little bit of time to get that right. So I think that looks a little bit better. Let's compare it to the other one. It might be hard to actually see the difference in it. All right, let's try to look at this and see if it's any different. All right, looks pretty similar. I don't think I'm going to be able to get much more out of that area, but I think I'm going to go with this original one because that looks pretty darn good here. So you can tell, compared to what we started with, that dynamic background extraction can help remove some of that uneven light pollution gradient that you have that is absolutely crushing any of the dark nebulae and faint gas and dust that are in the night sky that we wouldn't be able to see. So now we're able to recover some of that down around the edges of the Orion Nebula and really start to see it come through. So it looks awesome. Next up, we need to go through and do a little bit of color correcting. So I'm going to exit out of that dynamic background extraction. I'm going to color correct this image. I see there's kind of a color cast going on here. What I want to do with it is I want to first neutralize the background. And all we need to do is click Alt-N on Windows, and that's going to allow us to draw a preview. And if you select a little portion of the background here, you want to grab that and set it as a preview. So that's preview 1, click OK, and usually default settings are okay. So all you need to do is drag that over and apply it, and it'll minorly adjust that so you can blink it on and off. It kind of fixed a little bit of a color cast. All right, background neutralization is done. Sweet. Next up, we're going to do a color correction, and that is going to clean up the color even more, and we're going to run that with the same background preview that we were using. preview 1. I need to draw a white reference, and we're going to select a new preview, Alt-N, and I'm going to drag that on some of the nebula here as a white reference. So I'm going to select that as preview 2 and default settings as well. I'm going to click, drag, and apply. Wow, sweet. Now we're in business. Look at this. We're cooking with gas now. So you really can start seeing fixes some of the gradient. You start seeing some of the dark nebulae pop. And of course, look at the color when we fix it of the Orion Nebula itself. Clean and natural. We have a lot of gas and dust here that we're starting to reveal just because we corrected for color imbalance. Okay, so what I like to do now at this stage, we have stacked the images, we have combined them, and we applied some color correcting after we neutralized some of that gradient from light pollution. So I like to save this file now because we just did a lot of work, and this is going to be our master file as of right now. This is going to be our tutorial master right here of M42, the Orion Nebula. I'm going to save that as a FITS, 32-bit standard here. We have everything ready to go now. I'm going to clean up and remove this screen transfer function, and I want to attempt an arc sine stretch. And this I have found is a great way to preserve some of that color that is in the image while retaining some of the highlights. So estimate your black point with a little live preview, and we can do a small little stretch on this guy. To bring out some of that nebula here. So now that we have this image after an arc sine stretch, I mean, to me it absolutely looks beautiful as it is, and that's one of the cool things about stretching with arc sine stretch function, because I've noticed that it really keeps some of the color and it retains the star diameter as much as it can. It keeps the stars tight, essentially. It doesn't expand them out and bloat them and overexpose them. So what I want to do next is, I see that there is kind of a green cast to the exposure. So one cool thing you could run is called the tool here, SCNR. And what this is going to do is, this is going to grab the green in the exposure and it's going to reduce it. So it's a beneficial way to reduce some of the green if you have a color cast going on. So I'm going to do that and maybe try 75% as an amount for now and see how that looks. So if we zoom in, we could do a little before and after here. So you can see all along that dust lane, and especially in the core. Watch the core and this hydrogen alpha really just become more color balanced and neutral. Stars retain a beautiful color to them. That green hue is gone. So the image is definitely coming along, looking beautiful. That tool is done. Aside from some of the noise in the background, that would be a next step to clean up, I believe. So what I want to do is run a few iterations of this noise reduction and TGV denoise. Takes a little bit of time to run this, but I'm going to do multiple iterations, and I found that it does a good job at preserving the detail in the highlights. And all I'm going to do is drag it and run it and let it run once. I'm going to run it twice, and possibly a third time. I'm going to make sure I observe and watch the areas of the nebula to make sure they don't become too soft. Some noise is very good, but I noticed from the stretch, I did a pretty aggressive stretch here, that the noise is a lot higher in the background just because this is only an hour of data. I mean, that is absolutely nothing in terms of you know, some of the numerous dozens of hours that could be shot on targets like this to really bring out and clean up the noise. So we'll let this run and we'll examine the noise performance after we denoise it. All right, so one iteration of TGV denoise has occurred. Just finished up. So blinking between before, right here, this is before and after. You can see that some of the sky noise has been degraded, but still not as much as I would like. So I'm gonna run this for a second time. All right, the second iteration of TGV denoise has just finished up. So let's see how that compared to the original. So this is the original, this is one pass, this is two pass. I'm gonna hit it for a third pass, and then I think that'll be done. Because even as of right now, I mean, it's much cleaner than it originally was, but we're pushing the background pretty hard, so it's noisy as it is. And what I'm gonna do is run it one final time. All right, cool. So it just finished up the third iteration of TGV denoise, and I am pretty blown away by what we got with only 1 hour of data from light polluted skies. I mean, we're getting background gas and dust, and especially up over here. I mean, there's this beautiful dark nebula area coming in, and I think from here, I'm gonna make sure I save it again. This is our working file that we've been saving. I'm pretty darn happy with this, and at the point, usually pull this into Photoshop to just do minor touch-ups and finish it up for sharing on the web and for printing. So I'm gonna save this as a TIFF, and then I'm gonna pull it into Photoshop. All right, we saved the TIFF. Photoshop is open, so let's go ahead and get it inside Photoshop and take a look at it. All right, so here's our file. What I want to do, make some final adjustments. I'm going to probably play around with the position and maybe rotate this sucker around and kind of see what we look like vertical like this. That looks kind of cool. All right, so looking at the histogram, so we're not clipping any of the whites. This is the black end of the histogram. I'm going to duplicate a layer by dragging this main layer down to the box down here, or you can hit Control J. Control J also will duplicate your layer. I think what I want to do is try to use this TK action panel that helps me select luminance values to maybe select and increase the brightness on some of these areas selectively, because this core is going to overexpose pretty quickly as it is. So maybe a midtones 5, that's a pretty wide range of tonal values, but we can select that and then create a curves mask, and we can adjust that. If you watch, you can see it's going to adjust the curves for the midtone values, and it can either add contrast or it could remove some, obviously. So you can see you can play with the curves a little bit, finish it up, just add a little bit of brightness back into the image here. I think that looks pretty cool as it is. So, what else we can do with this? Maybe raise up some of the darks. I'm starting to see some more of the gradients from the light pollution if we really start to raise the darks. But if we create another curves layer with just selecting darks, we can adjust and try to see what we can work with. But as you can see, if you really start to go high, you start seeing all this gas and dust that's here, but you also start seeing some gradient issues and that sort of thing from shooting with all the light pollution. So with dark skies, that can absolutely be avoided and be remedied. So I'm not going to raise that high just because of how many gradients we still have in that photograph. And what else we can do, possibly add a little bit of saturation back into this image. We'll select a lights 1 selection and then pull in a vibrance. And you can obviously see if you go very high, you really start pushing in those colors and the vibrance, but obviously we don't want it to be that blue, but we can add some color into it, such as something like that looks pretty cool. Pretty darn blue. Looks really neat. Just the beautiful hydrogen in here. It's amazing. Wow. Yeah, this looks cool. Notice maybe if you're not liking as much blue, you can always create a color balance adjustment layer, and you can remove some of the blue by adding some yellow in if you would like to do that. Another way to remove some of the blue, we'll delete this layer. You can create a levels adjustment layer, and you can select just the blue channel, and you can maybe bring the blue channel down a couple points. And of course that's going to make it a little bit on the green side. So let's take a look and see what that looks like before and after by reducing the blues. It reduces some of the blues in the background, which is pretty much what I wanted to do, because we started to get this blue edging around the background sky, which is not really there, it's just from all the noise. But something like that looks pretty cool. Now that looks pretty beautiful. For 1 hour of data, pretty happy with it. And I think what I want to do is I would like to actually crop in on this data just a little bit more to kind of frame it nicely. Do something like that. Looks good. And if you're noticing that you're getting some more blues in the background sky, which you can select info and just kind of read these pixel values. I'm seeing blue, red 46, blues 26, and greens are at 28. So definitely remove some of the blues. I think we can do that with just selecting some of the darks. And then we could do a adjustment layer to remove some of that blue in the background sky. And before and after, remove that blue, just adds a little bit of that brown back in. Maybe a little less than that. And before and after, just cleans up some of that blue and just warms it up a little bit. Now that looks awesome. So pretty much from here, for me, I'm ready to flatten the image, save it, and share it for the web, or turn this into a print, you know. So with the 3-minute photos, the core, I'm surprised how well the core was maintained. It wasn't overexposed. Benefit of the arcsine stretch is it keeps the contrast low when it stretches, so it retains a lot of that dynamic range. But with these kind of areas, you can always shoot shorter exposures, which is something I actually did. You can shoot, 10-second photos of just the core itself, or you can do, 30-second photos, just shorter images to blend back in. So if I saw that this core was too bright, what I could do is I can grab these shorter exposures that I shot, and you can grab these in PixInsight and stack, blend, do the same process, and then blend that into the core area. So this example here shows you a little 10-second photo. Let's see, and you can see how it's not debared. That's why it's showing the marks over the image here, but just a small stretch there shows the core of the Orion Nebula. But unstretched, we have the trapezium stars here, totally unstretched, but would be a good idea if you need to blend and retain that core for dynamic range. That is one option. Many ideas out there for solving all the issues with dynamic range of bright targets like this. and the Andromeda Galaxy. But I'm pretty stoked with how this one turned out for only an hour of data, and I'm ready to flatten it and save it. All right, I'll change the size of the file now. Usually like sharing little 4x5s. Good tiny little files, easy to transfer, easy to share online. And there you have it, an Orion Nebula shot from city glow of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tons of light pollution. But we maintained a lot of dynamic range in the image with just 3-minute photos, and we did 22 of them. Pretty spectacular. Got a lot of background gas and dust. Of course, darker skies would have been preferable, but we can't always travel to those. So if you guys have questions, let me know. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Appreciate you guys staying and watching the whole length. Clear skies, guys. Have fun.